Pokemon has been around for almost 30 years now, and we've all grown to love the series and its wide variety of creatures. There have been over 100 Pokemon games created across countless consoles, handhelds, and phones. We've seen the same Pokemon appear time and time again. It's hard to find a game without Pikachu. Gen 5. But not all Pokemon are created equal. We have Pokemon that are extremely common, like Magikarp and Zubat, which are very easy to find and catch. We also have rarer Pokemon like Ralts and Phoebus that are much harder to find. Of course, we have legendary Pokemon like Ho-Oh and Dialga, Pokemon so rare that legends have been created about them. Beyond that, we have mythical Pokemon like Deoxys and Darkrai, which typically can't be found by conventional means. At least, that's how it looks at the surface level. Looking across the mainline games, some of these legendary Pokemon like Mewtwo are obtainable in many of the games. That got me thinking, what if some of these legendary Pokemon aren't so legendary? What if these legendary Pokemon appear in more mainline games than some of the common Pokemon from their generation? Do we have common legendaries and legendary commons? I set out on a journey to discover whether these legendary commons exist. First, we need to set up some baseline rules that I'll be using for my investigation. Rule number 1, we'll be using the mainline games plus the DLC plus Pokemon Legends Arceus. Rule number 2, each version counts separately. So red, green, blue, and yellow will count as 4 different versions. In total, we're looking at 38 games. For this investigation, there will be no trading from version to version. So no trading version exclusives from red to blue, or using PokeTransfer, PokeHome, PokeBank, etc. Trade evolutions are fine, otherwise those would automatically be exceedingly rare. For the sake of this, we will accept trading to the same version. And for gens that have in-game NPC trades, those are also fine. We will be considering no event-only methods of obtaining Pokemon. We will not be using the global trade system, the Friend Safari, the Dream Radar, the Dream World, etc. And we will not be looking at regional forms. With all of that out of the way, I looked at the data for generations 1 through 7. For Gen 8 and 9, it's pretty obvious. Either they showed up in Scarlet and Violet or they didn't. And for brevity, I'll be referring to the base form of the Pokemon's evolutionary line unless a gen introduced a new evolution. So let's get started. In Generation 1, the original 151 Pokemon, we have 4 legendaries: Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Mewtwo. The 3 birds are obtainable in 20 different games. Mewtwo is obtainable in 18 games, and we will be using these as our baseline for legendary status. We have some Pokemon that just missed the cutoff. Mankey is obtainable in 24 games. Meowth, the talkative cat we all know and love from the anime, is only in 22 games. Bellsprout, Growlithe, Vulpix, and Weedle just barely missed the legendary mark, each obtainable in 21 games. Now we have some Pokemon that are also obtainable in 20 games, making them as rare as the bird trio. If you guessed the starters, you would be right. Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle are all obtainable in 20 games. Those aren't the rarest of the OG though. There's one Pokemon that's rarer than both the birds and Mewtwo. It's so rare that it's only obtainable in not 17, not 16, but 15 games. This Pokemon is arguably the rarest non-mythical Pokemon there is. This absolute legend of a Pokemon is none other than Ekans. That's right, Ekans, a relatively well-known Pokemon due to Team Rocket in the anime, has only been in 15 games. For whatever reason, this snake just hasn't made as many appearances as the rest of its cohort. In Gen 10, we better see a new form for Ekans because the pure poison typing really isn't doing Ekans any favors. As a side note, I am terribly sorry about my Pokemon pronunciation. I am going to butcher some of these as we get farther on. Moving on to Gen 2. We have Raikou and Entei with 14 appearances. Oddly enough, Suicune has 13 appearances. In Ultra Sun and Moon, you need both Raikou and Entei to encounter Suicune, but Raikou and Entei are both version exclusives. And also we have Lugia and Ho-Oh with 10 appearances. Near misses in this gen are Unknown and Houndour with 15 appearances each. Gilgar appears 14 times. That makes it as rare as Raikou and Entei. The starters appear 13 times, making them rarer than Raikou and Entei, and just as rare as Suicune. These starters being as rare as the dogs matches Gen 1's starters being as rare as the birds. I thought that was pretty neat. Teddy Ursa appears 12 times, which makes it rarer than the 3 dogs. And to my surprise, none of the Gen 2 Pokemon have less appearances than Lugia and Ho-Oh. That means Lugia and Ho-Oh are properly legendary for their generation. Speaking of legendaries, Gen 3 has quite a few. Let's look at the scores to beat this time. Regirock appears 13 times. Regice and Registeel appear 12 times. Latios and Latias appear 10 times. And finally, Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza are just a little rarer with 9 appearances each. This is the first generation where the starters appear more often than every legendary. The starters appear in 15 different games. We have 3 Pokemon that are as rare as Regirock. Those would be Skitty, Zangoose, and Solrock. We also have 3 Pokemon that are as rare as Regice and Registeel. Those would be Seedot, Lunatone, and Kecleon. There are no Pokemon in Gen 3 that are rarer than Latios, Latias, Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza, which makes them proper legendaries. Gen 3 has been pretty good with their appearance rates. On the other hand, Gen 4 has not been good with their appearances. They also have 9 legendaries. The most common legendaries are the 3 Spirits and Cresselia, each sporting 14 appearances. Heatran is slightly less common with 13 appearances. After that, there's a huge drop. Giratina is the next legendary with 8 appearances. Then Dialga and Palkia have 7 appearances. Finally, Regigigas is the rarest legendary in the generation with 6 appearances. His rarity is mainly because you require all 3 of the other Regis, and typically those are version exclusive. There's a lot of Pokemon here, so let's just rapid fire them. Starly, Cranidos, Sheldon, Baniri, and Mime Jr. all appear 15 times, just barely missing the cutoff. Bidoof, Kricketot, Cherubi, Parachisu, Chatot, Snover, Tangrowth, Dusknoir all appear 14 times, which is as often as the Spirits and Cresselia. Pink Shellos and Miss Magius are as common as Heatran with 13 appearances. The starters and Carnivine are just rarer than Heatran with 12 appearances. Blisscore has 11 appearances. Burmy with 10 appearances. Spiritomb has 9 appearances, which is just rarer than Giratina. Stunky is as rare as Giratina with 8 appearances. And lastly, we have another exceptionally rare Pokemon. Glameow comes in with a whopping 5 appearances, which makes it the rarest Pokemon in Gen 4. Glameow is rarer than both Dialga and Palkia. I feel like I rattled off half the Gen 4 Pokédex at this point. Some of those Pokemon don't really get much love. Shout out Snover, he's one of my favorite Pokemon. Much like Gen 4, Gen 5 also features 9 legendaries. In this generation, the dogs are the most common legendaries, each appearing 11 times. There are only 4 later games they don't appear in, so this list will be super inflated because of them. After that, the box legendaries Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem all appear 6 times. Even rarer than that, we have Tornadus and Thundurus who appear 5 times. And finally, Landorus appears 3 times, again due to version exclusivity on Tornadus and Thundurus. There are quite a few Pokemon who just missed the list. I'm going to spare you the pain and just start with Pokemon that are as rare as the dogs. With 11 appearances, we have Gothita and Golett. After that, we have so many Pokemon with 10 appearances. The starters, Drillbur, Venipede, Basculin, Sigilyph, Ducklet, Fungus, Frillish, Joltik, Clink, Elgium, Cryogonal, and Stunfisk. These are all technically rarer than the not-so-rare legendary dogs. We have a few Pokemon with 9 appearances, Solosis, Rufflet, and Vullaby, and then another horde of Pokemon with 8 appearances. Munna, Pidove, Blitzel, Woobat, Temple, Throw, Sock, Maractus, Yamask, Deerling, Carablast, Ferroseed, Shelmet, Bouffalant, Heatmor, and Durant. I am out of breath. Finally, we have 2 Pokemon that are almost as rare as the Boxmon, Purloin and Duramaka. In Gen 5, there are no Pokemon that are rarer than the box legendaries, and certainly not rarer than the forces of nature. We do have 4 Pokemon that are as rare as Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem, though. Any guesses? Patrat, and the 3 elemental monkeys, Pansage, Panseer, and Panpour. We haven't seen any of them since X and Y. Please, Game Freak, if you're listening, send them home. Almost to the end of our journey, we have Gen 6. In Gen 6, they chilled out with the legendaries and only introduced 3 of them. We have Zygarde with 8 appearances, and Xerneas and Yveltal with 3 appearances. Now this gen is weird. Rather than looking at which Pokemon are as rare or rarer than legendaries, we're going to look at Pokemon that are more common than legendaries. Because outside of 6 Pokemon, everything else is as rare or rarer in many cases as Zygarde. The only Gen 6 Pokemon that are more common than Zygarde are Fletchling with 10 appearances, Carbink with 10 appearances, Umi with 10 appearances, Lefka with 12 appearances, Phantump with 12 appearances, and Sylveon with 13 appearances, which makes a lot of sense because Eevee is everywhere. Outside of that, every Pokemon this generation is kind of legendary rarity. Zygarde's commonality really messed that up. There are 2 Pokemon rarer than Xerneas and Yveltal though. Spritzee and Swirlix appear in 2 games. They are the real legends of Gen 6. Generation 7 is crazy with the Guardian Deities, the Box Legendaries, and the Ultra Beasts, who aren't legendaries, but kind of are legendaries, but aren't. I'm not going to go into too many details here as there's not really any interesting findings. It's worth noting that Turtonator and Drampa appear in 1 less game than Solgaleo and Lunala. And I'm going to leave it at that. Gen 8 and 9 don't really have anything interesting to call out, but I'm sure that will change when we make it to Gen 12 or so. I thought it was pretty interesting to look at the data and see which Pokemon fell through the cracks. We learned that some legendaries, like the Gen 6 dogs and Zygarde, are more common than most of the Pokemon in their respective generation. We also learned that a few legendaries, like most of the Gen 3 legendaries, or the Forces of Nature from Gen 5, actually have a rarity that matches their legendary status. And finally, we learned that there are some outstandingly rare Pokemon, like Spritzee and Swirlix in Gen 6, Glameow in Gen 4, and Ekans in Gen 1. These Pokemon exist in between the realm of common and legendary. Should these Pokemon be legendary? I'm not sure, but they're legends in my book.